So this morning, we were looking at how to connect our Mongo database to a Node application. So firstly, we had our connect function here written in the database database.js file. And again, this was just basically a copy and paste job, right, from Mongo Atlas. We just wrapped it in a promise as well and exported the connect function. On our back end, we had the invocation of our connect function, and then with the database object that got returned, we wrapped any of our routes inside of that block. So in other words, when a user made a GET request to REST/user data, we would already be connected to our database and therefore able to go into a certain collection and find, in this case, all of the users. So this is one of the query methods that we use for MongoDB. We'll talk tomorrow about various different methods and operations that we can use in Mongo so that we can, rather than just getting data, which is what we're doing now, we're reading data, we can update and find and delete and all those sorts of things, yeah? All the CRUD operations, so create, read, update, delete. And we'll look at the different methods inside of Mongo to enable us to do that. But for now, we're just setting up the connection, right? So this should read all of our data from our database, turn it into an array, and send it back from our backend server to our front end, and then we can handle it however we want. But only when the user makes a request, a fetch request to get REST shows, yeah? So that is most of what we saw this morning. However, we had a proxy error, right? Do you remember we had a proxy error this morning? So we weren't actually getting any data. So, of course, one of the obvious things that you need to do first is make sure the Mongo server is actually running on your local environment, if that's what you want to do, right? To connect to Mongo. So I needed to start my Mongo server so that I could make connections to either local or remote databases. So that's why I've added in my package.json a start DB script. And then I invoke that the same way that you've been doing with npm run all in parallel. So rather than now just starting the front end and the back end, we're also starting our database handler, yeah? So now that we've got that set up, just trying to check what else I did. So that was in that one. In the database, what did I change? I think I was just moving a few lines around. In the server, yeah, I just tidied that up. Made sure obviously we're rendering our data. So now the main changes we need to do are on the front end. So yeah, I don't think we had much different to that to begin with, right? So we set our initial data so that when we ran it, we just mapped over whatever object we had and rendered that to the screen. So our data was set in the state, and we can use the setDate method to set our database data in the state as well. That will of course re-render our function, and we can map over each entry in the database just to display the user's name, yeah, or the user. So this is why we're just getting an initial at the moment, because we're rendering this one option to the screen. If I put another object inside my initial render, and put an age of 35, will that change what's displayed on my screen? So will I get 35 displayed anywhere based on my return function? On my return here? Will I get anything else displayed based on my new input array? So this is my initial state now.
Would it be better?
Just Bilal? So initial should still be there, right? Because that has a user key. So what we're doing is we're mapping over all of our array. And for each entry in our array, which in this case is just 2 objects, so maybe I can make that a little bit clearer for you. So we've got 1 object, we've got 2 objects inside of our array. So for each one, we're extracting the value of user and rendering it to the screen. Yeah? So we should end up with both initial and Bilal on the screen. Right? Cool. I can block out the form for now if you want, because we're not actually using the form, are we, at this stage to send any data. So if I quickly go to Atlas again, and we have a look at what's in my database, you can tell me what you think we will render on the screen this time. Oh. Palm trees. That one's got a palm tree, right? Anything else? Let's try that. We passed. Okay, so in our database, if we checked our collections again, obviously this is just a dummy database, right? We've just been messing around with it over the course of a few workshops. So it doesn't have any really relevant data in there, but we should find that it at least contains objects with the user key sometimes. So, sorry, you can't see that very well, but I'm in there, obviously, gray@g.com. Viv's in there, Florence, past students a lot of the time, right? Ruben from the evening class. Sometimes we've just got a user called hello. Got Porik in there. So what do you think? That's just empty ones. Davide, yeah. So what do you think is going to get displayed when we retrieve our database data? I think there's 22 entries. So how many things will get displayed on our screen? 22, right? Yeah. So we should return just whatever the corresponding value of user is in each case, yeah, based on our code.
I have a question about the ID. So
Yeah.
is that, in Atlas, is that the ID that's been assigned?
Yeah, so Mongo will just auto-generate that for you, that ID. Can you still have a property called ID? Yes. You could do that, absolutely.
So the object ID is
But I would definitely call it ID like that, because they use underscore ID. Yeah, see, it's in red. I don't think they will let me now assign a value to that. Let's see. Oh, no, you see, it sort of went in and then it disappeared again. Whereas if I do add a new field, it doesn't matter where, but I can call it ID and just give it some random number, or let's call it an actual, it's not a double, is there, just a normal int 32 will do. And that stays there, you see, so it won't let you create an underscore ID, but you're more than welcome to put your own ID reference in there if you want in the database. Yeah, you don't have to use the auto-generated one. Up to you. Okay. Cool. So back into the code. Yep, so we're just rendering our data component, which is this one. So what we want to do is we want to fetch, right? So I think a few of you, the first time you looked at fetch, thought, oh wow, it's pretty complicated, but we're actually creating a fetch request to a database there via a few steps, but a fetch request to a database. The data we get back, we're turning into JSON data so that we can actually read it, and then setting it into the state, yeah? All in a couple of lines. So really powerful code there. Once you get used to writing fetch requests, then that will be second nature, right? It's not too complicated once you get used to it. A lot's going on under the hood, but the syntax is not too bad. What does the empty array do there?
Stop from fetching.
It definitely would avoid an infinite loop, yeah. Also, not really initialize, no. Initialize what? Initialize the fetch? No, the fetch would work without having that. It's to do with the use effect, right? This empty array here. But it means it's only going to try and fetch this data once after our component initially mounts or initially renders, yeah? So our code will run through once. It will return the result of mapping our initial value in state, initial and below, will get rendered to the screen very, very quickly. We might not even see it. We'll see if we can spot it in a second. And then, once that initial render has completed, we're actually going to fetch our database data. Yeah, so you instead might not populate your initial state this way. I think in CodeFlix you've used something like just an empty string, and then maybe said only map across your data if data.user is valid or something like that, right? We could have a conditional render in there. Yep, I won't do that now. I'll just put it into practice. So that fetch, what is going to happen? Well, that is going to go and communicate with our backend server file. We're already connected to the database because our backend is running, so we've got this database object that we can manipulate. It will look for a matching route. It will find one, so therefore it will run this code inside. So we're going to make a connection to our database, which is stored in Belgium or something, I believe. We're going to retrieve all of this. It's one of the free tiers, right? Belgium's got a lot of supercomputers, I guess, and we can connect to a Mongo cluster over there, and that will retrieve our data from the database, send it back inside of this results. So then we'll end up here, yeah, the response, turn it to JSON, and then set it in the state. And then that will re-render our component and map over the users. So I've told you what I think it should do. It'd be a bit embarrassing now if it doesn't do it, but let's give it a go. Oh, they're all there. But I actually wanted to see if we refreshed, whether we just see bill out and initial very quickly. Keep your eyes peeled, don't blink. Yep, do you see it? So you can see that initially we're rendering just those two, and then within a very, very short space of time, right? That connection is unbelievable, isn't it, really, if you think about it, where it's going to get that data and then pull that back, and it re-renders on the page, those 22 entries. And I've just got a console log down here so that we could just definitely see what we're returning. We're returning that underscore ID that comes from Mongo. I'll make it a bit bigger for you. Yeah, so this is all the data that we've pulled from our database. That's the ID that Mongo has created for us. Yeah, a unique identifier. So when we're mapping over, we could of course use that unique identifier, right? That would be a really good thing to do. So rather than just having a paragraph tag here, we usually get a warning. What does the warning say, guys? I always forget. Console. So it says each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So can we get away with putting that key in a paragraph tag? Should we try? And what could I set my key equal to? If I want to use that ID that comes from the database that they've already created for me.
Object level?
Not object. What have I called each object in this case? Entry, yeah. Each entry in the database I've called entry. So underscore ID is what they've used, yeah? So hopefully, form is fine, yeah, that's fine. Let me just get rid of that warning as well. So we've got no warnings that end. If we refresh, is it still complaining? Yeah, it is, right? Okay, it's a bit annoying. Yeah, okay, I'll have to leave that for now, but I think it is putting it inside the paragraph tag if we have a look. No, it's not using it, is it? Oh yeah, I'd have to, I think, did I change the backend? No, I didn't change the backend. Anyway, the key thing is we managed to pull the data from the database, and all really in not too much code, right? There's a lot of steps. So make sure you've got your connect file. You've got that code from Mongo Atlas. Most of it is skeletoned out for you. Make sure you know the name of the database that you're using, the name of the collection that you're using as well. And then make sure you've got your connection string. Again, you can copy and paste that from Atlas. Set up a route handler, which you've done already, but just wrap them. So this is your usual sort of REST API route handler here, but instead just wrap it all inside of your db.connect function. And then from the front end, use your fetch. And that's it really. Yeah, but the best thing is just to I'll give you this code again as an example. We'll build on it over the next couple of days. We'll add some different operations on the databases. Yeah, we'll look at how can we remove all those users that just say hello, for example, would be a good thing to do, right? So we've only got relevant data in there. How can we then add our own user by inputting it into a form, collect that on the front end, send it to the back end, send it to the database, store it there, and the whole process back again. So we'll flesh this out, yeah, over the week. Hopefully that's a decent start. So that combined with the couple of videos that we've already got on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, yeah, you've got the Atlas setup and you've got the intro to MongoDB that Ricardo's done on there as well. So if you combine all those, hopefully it's a good introduction to the databases for you. Cool. Cheers guys, enjoy your lunch.
Well done.